welcome to the Hit Podcast. I am your host, Eric Ruth, and today we are going to depose Anne Marie. Anne Marie thinks that she's overcome her trauma. We're going to find out the truth to make sure she has. Anne Marie, do you swear, affirm, or agree that the words you're about to speak are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you someone's God?
Yes.
Who did you come out of and where?
My biological mother. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta. I've moved 35 times, so I don't really have roots per se.
Okay. And what is your trauma?
My trauma is a trickle down of intergenerational trauma. I was failed by all three of my parents who had their own issues with addiction and didn't know how to raise a child because they weren't done themselves. And so that translated to physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, pretty much everything except sexual.
Okay. You mentioned three parents. Who are these three parents?
Yes, my biological mom, my father, and my stepmother.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one older brother and one younger half-sister.
Okay. Can you go into kind of some specifics about the trauma that you experienced from these parents when you were younger, and if it was your entire childhood or just short periods? What was the time frame there?
Time frame was about 30 to 35 years. I have been diagnosed with CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, and it started immediately. I was reminded often that I was born to try and save a marriage, and that didn't work, so I was a paycheck. And I was in the way. I was an extra set of hands to help raise my sister. I did all the chores and cooking. I was rolling cigarettes by the time I was 7. And, every Christmas trying to hide all the beer bottles and things so that my sister could have a good Christmas. And I took the brunt of a lot of things. I was the scapegoat.
How did your trauma manifest itself?
Mostly in anger, also in a autoimmune disease that is triggered by stress. I have Crohn's. I started having symptoms when I was 21 and was diagnosed 2 years later. And when I moved to Winnipeg for my first surgery, I actually moved away from Edmonton, and just being that far away from my abuser, I went into remission. I didn't need surgery right away. And so that started a deep dive into the correlation between trauma and autoimmune diseases.
This seems like a silly question, but how did you become aware that your trauma was affecting your ability to live a normal life?
I think immediately. I never had a good relationship with my biological mother. I never said I loved her. She never said it to me. It was always kind of a transactional relationship. And I knew from how other people were acting at school and daycare and things like that, that my normal wasn't everyone's normal.
What was your coping mechanism as a kid?
Daydreaming.
As you say, what's your coping mechanism as an adult?
Daydreaming.
Yeah. Can you remember specifically when that started?
The daydreaming?
Yeah.
Oh, that started when I was about 4. I was given my first journal and started writing in it, and I didn't like what I was writing because I was writing about what was happening to me. And so I started making stories and, these fantasies where I was surrounded by people who loved me. And that's actually where I made my safe place in my head that translated into a business that I own now called Red Door Doula. Because in the forest clearing, there was always a red door leaning against a willow tree. And that's where I take my clients on guided meditations now. I bring them into my safe space.
That's awesome. And I'm excited to talk about your work as a death doula in a second. First, I want to talk about the work that you did as a kid to, besides coping, did you do any work as a child to deal with your trauma?
As best as a child could, I was very curious about why. Why are you treating me like this? Why are you treating my siblings different? Just why? And for the longest time, as a child does, I was like, okay, it's me. It's something wrong with me. So I started to, maybe if I did more chores, maybe if I was quieter, maybe. And nothing worked. And then when I was 6 days away from my birthday, I was sexually assaulted by my 18-year-old male babysitter. And my biological mom chose not to press charges because she still needed to use his mother for after-school care for me.
How old were you, Anne-Marie?
7.
And he was 18?
Yes.
Your mom knew about it?
Yes. I told her as soon as she got home, and she didn't believe me, so she video recorded me basically asking me all the questions before the police got there because she said that I was just going to lie to the police anyways. And when the police came, they believed me.
Just curious, what happened after that?
Nothing.
What work have you done as an adult to overcome your trauma?
Mostly journaling, deep diving. I like to go online and find quotes that resonate with me and then sort of discuss it with myself about why it resonates with me. I like to find the profound questions and really understanding myself because I didn't have that. I didn't have those roots. I didn't have that foundation. So I didn't know, am I my trauma? Am I like this because of my trauma? Am I like this and the trauma just happened anyways? I was trying to figure out where I stood with myself.
What kind of journaling do you do?
Mostly letters. I'll write letters to myself, letters to other people, so I can say things that I want to say that I can't. I also have a secondary journal that's called my happy book. And it's good things only that go in there.
Let's go back a second to the letters. I suspect you don't send these to people?
Very rarely.
Oh, so you do?
Sometimes. Sometimes I'll burn them.
Give me a circumstance where you would send these letters to somebody.
When I was 16, I lived with my father and stepmother. And that's when his drinking really, really ramped up. You know, he had always been a guy with a beer in his hand before, but now it was showing. He was very angry drunk, very mean drunk. And nothing I said to him seemingly got through to him. So I was like, all right, went to my journal and I wrote him a letter, and brave 16-year-old me was like, I'm going to tape this to his bedroom door.
How did that go?
Not well.
That's an impressive amount of courage for a 16-year-old, though. So, as an adult, though, do you find that let me rephrase that. Strike that, as we say in the law world. Do you find that holding on to those letters gives you more joy than sending them as an adult?
Not so much holding on to them, but being able to express everything in my head because it's a safe space. I can say the intrusive thoughts. I can say the thoughts, because thoughts aren't facts. So I can say what I think and then explore that. Is that really what I think? Is that what someone taught me to think? Because I had a lot of negative self-talk growing up. My father once told me I'd end up homeless on a street somewhere and he wouldn't look twice at me. And so that kind of fueled me they say success is the best revenge. So I was like, you know what? Watch me. Watch me do this. And being able to explore that safely with myself has been, there's no words. I found myself.
In this exploration to find yourself, in this search, you mentioned that you had reviewed, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, inspirational quotes or quotes online. Was there um, any type of quotes from any particular person or school of thought or religion or anything that you found more helpful than others?
Definitely not religion. I had that shoved down my throat as a small child. And the day that I was sexually assaulted, I decided there was no God for me. And so I was reading by the time I was 5, like Nancy Drew and stuff like that, and things with strong, curious, adventurous women. And as I got older, of course, I was into the heavy music. I love Korn, still listen to Korn every day. And being able to express that anger through them. Because if you listen to the lyrics, they're actually sad. I need somebody, someone. And so, of course, I was very angsty and dyed my hair black and all that fun stuff. And then I found Stoicism. And to me, I'm more of a futuristic Stoic. I have hope for the future and hope that we can implement Stoicism again in a worldwide way with logic and control over our emotions. It doesn't mean that we don't feel them. It means we control how we react to them. And that was able to help me get my power back and sit down and talk with my anger and see that it's grief.
Let me ask you this. Stoicism's the first time that has been brought up on this podcast outside of my mouth. I am, of course, a very proud practicing Stoic. I found the philosophy 10 years ago. How did you find it?
I found it online on Reddit. It was just one of those, they suggest subreddits for you. And I was like, Stoicism. Okay, let's see what this is. I've always been into history, and I dove deep, and it was just an aha moment for me. It's like, I could do that.
What resonated with you the most about Stoicism versus organized religion or any other school of philosophy or even pop culture psychology that's come to be known?
I believe it's having the power within yourself and not giving that power to a higher entity or deity, and having that faith in yourself rather than in something bigger than yourself. So I do believe in people and that they mostly can be good, but I can't control that. I can only control myself. So I love the values of wisdom and logic, and we have such a gift of self-awareness, and it's being taken for granted nowadays, I believe. And so being able to practice Stoicism, and it is a practice. You're not just suddenly Stoic one day and then there you are for the rest of your years. It's like hygiene. You got to work on it every day.
So what does your practice of Stoicism look like?
So I'm usually carrying around one of my favorite books, How to Be Free. And I believe that was Epictetus. And it's how to be free within yourself. And it speaks to me, it sings to me, because that's what I'm looking for. I want that inner peace, no matter what's going on around me. You know, you can complain about the storm, or you can put on a rain jacket.
What does your life look like now inside the practice of Stoicism before you found it?
Night and day. Night and day.
So,
I would wake up angry, and being angry is so exhausting. And that's not who I want to be. For a very long time, I thought I was just a victim of my circumstances. And to a certain point, I was. But after I moved out, grew up a little bit, started taking care of myself, and understanding that how other people treat you is a reflection of themselves, not of you. So that washed away everything. Like, why wasn't I lovable? Why wasn't I good enough? It took away all the whys and answered that it wasn't because of something I did wrong. I was just in the crosshairs.
how long ago did you find Stoicism?
I'd say when I was about 25, 26,
How old are you now?
39.
What's been the hardest thing about practicing the philosophy?
Forgiving.
That's a great answer. And it leads me to the next question. What would you say to the person or persons that you perceive have perpetrated the harm and trauma against you?
At this point in time, I wouldn't. I'm not good at leaving things left unsaid to my detriment. And I don't wish them any harm, but I don't wish them in my life. And my unpopular opinion is that you do not have to forgive in order to heal.
Explain that a little bit.
Growing up, people would ask me about my parents, like, oh, you know, we don't talk, or whatever's been going on. And, oh, well, what? But they're family. That's your mom. Why don't you talk to your mom? Like, no one ever stopped to ask, like, what was so bad that you decided to stop talking to your mother? They never tried to understand my point of view. And that was very, very frustrating. And they'd always say, well, you know, forgive and forget. Family takes care of family. I'm like, well, my family didn't take care of me. I'll take care of my family, my chosen family. And they say, you know, forgiveness is divine and everything like that. I'm not looking to be divine. I believe that not getting any closure in itself is a type of closure, because we don't always get our closure. I could call my biological mom right now and be like, why did you do this? And she wouldn't be able to answer. So I'm not going to chase after any vindication or anything like that. I'm going to chase after my happiness.
So Marcus Aurelius says that forgiving people over and over is the only way to go towards an inner ease, as he calls it, and I tend to agree. When it comes to forgiveness of others, and you're saying that you don't have to forgive, obviously that's your opinion in that, but do you think that you can live as peaceful as possible without giving those that have harmed you a pass, so to speak, and say that was your nature, there was no way that you could have been anybody else? You think that's possible?
I think it's entirely possible, for sure. I believe in not holding grudges but keeping the receipts. And when someone shows you who they are, you believe them. And if we are so far apart and unable to communicate and have that closure, that discussion, of course I would love to, but logically I know it's not possible. And
Hold on a second.
so
Hold on. I got to stop you there. You said logically it's not possible to forgive for you.
logically it's not possible for me to have that conversation with them, a reciprocal, deep, meaningful conversation.
Okay. Is that what is required for you to be able to forgive, to be able to hear their input and expressions?
I don't think so. Like I said, there's nothing left for me to say, and I wish them well, just far away from me. And I don't think forgiveness is a free pass. I know it's an acknowledgement of, okay, you messed up. You can forgive someone and give them another chance, and you can forgive them and continue on without them.
I guess I probably should have stopped or started this with the context of what is forgiveness. And I guess my forgiveness may be a little bit different than others, but I define it as not having any ill will towards anybody, not having any negative emotion attached to them, be it excitement, be it jealousy, be it fear or anger. So do you harbor any of those emotions towards anybody that you feel has perpetrated any harm against you?
I don't think so.
Okay. So in that sense, couldn't you say that you have forgiven them?
I think I could say I've understood them.
Okay.
I believe there's a quote from a song that really, really, really hits home, that some things only God can forgive. And as I get older and I become the age that my parents were when they were parenting me, and think of the things that they said and did, of course I can say I could never do that. I don't have children. I'm one of those people. I would never let my child. Anyways. But I can't even talk that way to my dogs, my cats, my friends, to say those words to a small child who's looking up to you with those bright eyes with like, hey, show me the world, and you shut them down. It's awful. Hurt people, and I'm a living example.
Do you think you'd be capable of hurting your children the same way when you do have children, if you decide to have children?
Oh, first of all, I because of my trauma, I do not want children, and because of my my Crohn's disease, and I can't claim that it would be all unicorns and rainbows and everything like that. I'm sure there would be intrusive thoughts that would come out, but it's also owning it. I think I would be able to own it if I made a mistake, when I make a mistake, because that's going to happen, and be able to use that as a learning opportunity and be like, okay, I said this out of anger and I'm very sorry, and I'm going to try to do better and not say it again.
You hit you hit the nail on the head there. I just want to say that for context, as a parent myself, I was you 5 years ago saying I'm never going to do those things to my child. And I would sit here now and be a liar if I said it didn't happen. But you're right that when it happens to everybody, every parent in the world out there perpetuates that trauma by getting angry at their kids. And you can, from an objective standpoint, say that's wrong and you shouldn't do it. But I think the key is exactly what you're talking about. You come back and you say, hey, I screwed up. This is not appropriate. I shouldn't have done that. And that's what my wife and I'm sure everybody else does. So just for the listeners out there, the people that are yelling, all the parents going, hey, if you're not there, you can't do it. Because I say all the time, I'm a practicing Stoic, but my son is my little emotional terrorist. And he's the only person in the world that I've ever yelled at. And as somebody that's been yelled at and it's traumatizing for any child, you have to remember that step 2 is after you screw up, go back and own it. So just want to make sure that's clear. But I'm very glad that you brought that point up. What would you say to anybody that has been through similar trauma as you and finds themselves in sort of similar circumstances?
Don't make it your identity. It will be your identity for a little while. Trauma survivor, things like that. It's going to be a part of who you are, but I don't identify as a trauma survivor anymore. I'm just me. It's a scar I bear, but it's not all consuming anymore. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
There is. What did it look like when you were consumed by that and you did make your identity your existence as a trauma victim?
It was a very long pity party. I knew I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to be validated, and I would seek that through inappropriate means, with friends who didn't have the capability to understand. And I didn't know that I could reach out to adults. I didn't know that there were resources for people like me. And it was a dark cloud and a heavy weight that I carried around with me begrudgingly. And being able to set it down and walk away was freeing. It's like, I am not my trauma.
Can you say that Stoicism is the thing that helped facilitate you setting that down and being able to walk away?
Stoicism, music, journaling. Yeah.
I was hoping you could give me the soundbite, but you're right. I tend to agree that Stoicism is not the end all be all cure for anybody's trauma. It's a tool that you put in your tool bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same way with me. I went to punk music, not so much a Korn fan, but the angry lyrics certainly resonated with me in that regard. And same thing with punk music. You read the lyrics, and there's a lot of love in there. There's a lot of I'm angry because society isn't just. I'm angry because the world isn't fair and equitable. And then Stoicism right behind it to say, stop with those expectations. Let's just worry about what's going on with you. Build up that inner citadel. So I want to commend
punk music too.
There you go. I know a lot of my Canadian friends do. I want to commend you on the work that you have done, Anne-Marie. It's clear that you have done an immense amount of work to overcome your trauma and the horrific scenes that you have found yourself in. Tell the people right now what you're doing, what you're up to, and how you find your joy and happiness these days.
Well, I live in beautiful British Columbia, and being around the mountains and the trees and nature is so uplifting. I'm surrounded by a loving husband and 9 animals. I listen to music pretty much 24/7, writing, reading, and I have 3 small businesses. I do resin memorial keepsakes and jewelry. I am a death doula, and I've just started a podcast.
That's awesome. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called Dear Psychopomp. Let's talk about death.
That's absolutely appropriate. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very near and dear to my heart. I had a client who passed away in December who turned into long lost best friend over just a few months. And he was 27, part of the 27 Club, and stage 4. We never met. I don't even know what he looks like. I only know what he sounds like. And before he died, he said, "I love you, my dear psychopomp." And it touched my heart.
I can't thank you enough for your life and your experience and sharing it with us today, Anne Marie, and giving the people yet another tool in the tool bag to overcome trauma. One that, of course, is near and dear to my heart: journaling and Stoicism, and music too. I want to make sure that's clear. That music is absolutely a therapeutic tool that I've used throughout my life, and that many people do today. And I know corn's not my cup of tea, but I know many people do. I've met many people that have come from shit that are huge corn fans, and it's not, the type of music that most people would associate with that. So we'll make sure that's clear. Thank you very much for coming on, Anne Marie.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that's our time today, folks. If you have a story of trauma you'd like to share with us, please get a hold of us. You can find us at thehonestyexperiment.com, and you can find me at thegoodly25@gmail.com. Thank you very much. And until next time, have a good one.